we had Philadelphia play Washington. We had Dallas play the Giants. Philly sitting at 3-0. Dallas and the Giants at 2-1. Washington at 1-2. Here's what we learned this weekend. Back at it again. It's the Football Playbook with your boy RIC and the place to be. Checking in from the beautiful Jersey Shore, broadcasting around the universe here on this terrific Tuesday. This first place Tuesday got a nice ring to it, doesn't it, chat room? I see you out there, Adam, getting us jump started. Thank you so much. Hit the like button for everybody on board for the next 2 hours of power, bringing you up to Sports Take Guys at noon. But it's a first place Philadelphia Eagles team. Not only that, it's official after 3 weeks of play. Only two amigos at the top of the mountain, undefeated. That's your Philadelphia Eagles and your Miami Dolphins, and you can argue no two teams in football look better than them right now. In the AFC, you can argue maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars. I see them floating around a lot of people's power rankings now, 2-1. Don't look now. Doug Peterson comes to town. We'll have a lot on that today with our good friend Austin Lane, formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I remember Austin coming out of that 2010 NFL draft, and he's now doing the MMA deal with the mixed martial arts. We'll talk to him about that. Came across my timeline. He was doing the Duval. I was thinking, Austin, I just saw you at the Senior Bowl covering the Senior Bowl for Sports Illustrated, doing some media stuff. And so we'll dive into his Jaguars experience. He's obviously still close with the program and an ambassador. We'll also have our good friend Gail Saunders checking in from 4th and John coming up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Of course, he was down there in D.C. with the rowdy Boo Birds. Jalen Hurts saying after the game it felt like a home crowd, and that's in part because Gail coordinated the bus loads down to the D.C. trip, and we'll ask him about that experience. It's been a while since we had him on the show, so we'll check in, get his Eagles report. We'll get into some Monday Night Football last night. The undefeated Cooper Rush now 3-0 with his starts. I'll tell you what we learned from that matchup. But first, I want to start off with the Ric Serritella press conference from yesterday. A couple key takeaways and points that I took from it. First off, great praise for the offensive line and defensive line, crediting Howie Roseman, the general manager, in terms of how he constructed this team, the incredible depth they have, and how his son also played this weekend, and the keys to victory were also in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line. It's a big philosophy that he believes in, and we saw that. One of the questions was, hey, you've got some guys like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox playing an all-time career low snap count, but playing very productive, playing at a very high level. And he said, yeah, that's the plan. So we talked about the defensive line rotation yesterday. Expect to see a lot more of that throughout the season. And I like that. I like that strategy. I like that plan of attack. Jordan Davis is a guy that can develop at his own pace. Same deal with Nakobe Dean. I think I saw our producer behind the scenes, Tone, tweet out this week, hey, it's the luxury of great drafting, great depth, and having talent at multiple positions. And that's how you get an undefeated 3-0 Eagles team. Oh, by the way, you got the hottest quarterback in the National Football League. Woo! A lot of people now echoing what we've been stating pretty much since the show launched 21 episodes ago, is that Jalen Hurts is a franchise quarterback. Pay the man his money. Show him the sack. At some point, we'll pop on Nicole Lynn. It's probably too early in the year for that, but it's coming, guys. It's coming. That Jalen Hurts contract extension is coming. And anybody who's upset about it, not sure what you're watching, my friends. He also talked about Grant Calcaterra, who we saw with that big 40-yard run to start off the second half. asked him, why did it take so long for him to get on the field? He said, the coaching staff has a lot of faith in Calcaterra, but because he missed so much time, they were comfortable with him in the passing game. They wanted to get him caught up to speed in the running game. They now feel comfortable enough where they probably aren't going to activate Noah Togiai again this week. And that brings us to another roster decision that they need to make on Britton Covey, because Covey was elevated for the third time from the practice squad to the active roster. That's it. I think he's maxed out now. They've either got to make a decision and elevate Covey to the permanent 53-man roster, or I don't know exactly what the rules are. I think John McMullen will have to check in with him. But it did come up about Devonta Smith and his punt returning, and would that be something we see more of? And Coach Sirianni, he was reluctant to commit to that. He did say, we're trying to get Devonta Smith the ball in his hands as many ways as possible. And something that he did at Alabama, he was very short-handed in the punt return game. So he said, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. He said, we'll see how the season goes. I think it's going to be an occasional thing. You need a big play before the half. Maybe you put Devonta Smith back there and try to flip the field. End of game, need a big play. Maybe you put Devonta Smith back there. Now, come playoff time, there's a big risk reward there, right? Because I want Devonta Smith back there as often as possible. He's a big play waiting to happen. At the same time, you got to be careful with the injuries, the durability, how many hits he's taking. So I think Sirianni's response saying, hey, we'll see how it goes. We'll play it by ear. We'll see how the season progresses. Fair enough. Also interesting, we didn't mention this yesterday. The final outcome of that Commander score was 24-8. Ironically enough, the two numbers that Kobe Bryant wore, 24-8, which surprisingly, according to the Scorigami folks, it's only the second time in NFL history. Think about that. In 103 years, it's only the second time in NFL history that the final score of an NFL game was 24-8. And the reason why it's relevant is because Sirianni showed the Eagles a Kobe Bryant themed video, and the message coincided with what he was preaching to the team this week, getting ready for an old teammate, getting ready for some friends, which is Carson Wentz. And he said, hey, you're all ultimate competitors. It was a prerequisite for you to make the roster. Everybody's an ultimate competitor, but he showed them the Kobe Bryant video to remind them. And in it, this was, I guess, Kobe when he was preparing for the Olympics, and he was talking about his teammate, Paul Gasol, and he's talking to his Olympic, fellow teammates saying, hey, Paul Gasol's a teammate. He's a friend. But, hey, when we play him, I'm best believing putting my elbow in his chest and sending a statement. He ain't a friend today. And so, Sirianni said it coincided with the message that he was trying to deliver. And so the Mamba preaching the mantra of the ultimate competitor and using the Paul Gasol comparison, how Gasol was such a great friend with Kobe Bryant. Carson Wentz, as we saw with Fletcher Cox before the game, still had friends on this team. And so, yes, RIP to the great Kobe. Thank you, everybody in the chat room, for waking up with us. Show your boys some love. Hit the like button as we continue to prep you for Jaguars week. We got Austin Lane coming up at 11, Gail Saunders in just a little while. But sticking to the Sirianni press conference, our good friend John McMullen, of course, Birds 365, which airs right before this show, asked Sirianni, he said, hey, you got Doug Peterson coming to town. Obviously, very highly regarded, bringing a championship to this town. A couple things here. Said, are you hoping Frank calls you back first, alluding to Frank Wright, the head coach of the Colts? And Sirianni said, I hope he's calling me back first, because obviously Frank Wright, a mutual friend of Doug Peterson and Nick Sirianni. Now, Sirianni said he's never met Doug Peterson personally, had nothing but high praise and respect, has heard nothing but good things, but said, hey, with Frank being in the AFC South, hopefully he gives me a call back first this week, get some intel on the Trevor Lawrence-led Jaguars, and we'll get into more on that in a second. So thought that was a little bit interesting. And, in terms of injuries, said nothing concerning. We'll let you know. We'll keep you posted, but nothing that seemed to be an urgent matter. The one player I'm keeping an eye on is Darius Slay. We saw him leave early in the first quarter there. He did return, but for the second consecutive week, he only played about 80% of the snaps. So I'm guessing maybe a little bit more banged up than they're letting on, because otherwise I look Bradbury 100%, Marcus Epps 100%, CD Juice 100%, everybody else in that secondary pretty much playing all of the snaps except for Darius Slay. So we'll continue to monitor that. He would probably draw the Christian Kirk assignment, I would think. Kirk being the bigger play threat over Zay Jones. But hey, that Jaguars offense, we'll get into it. It's a little bit unpredictable. They've got a lot of different pieces, and it'll be a challenging matchup the way the Jaguars are playing for sure. And then one last thing on the Sirianni presser, when he was talking about the veteran leadership of Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce specifically, we had Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal on yesterday, and we spoke about, guys like Fletcher Cox, guys like Cam Jurgens, who really played very well in the preseason. They can't see the field because they have these legacy players ahead of them, right? And he said, listen, it's not Jason Kelce's responsibility or Fletcher Cox's responsibility to groom these guys or mentor the younger players, but he says they have, unprompted, not because they have to, because they get it, because they want to. And let's be frank, Fletcher Cox, the chances of him coming back at that price tag next year, slim to none. Jason Kelce, isn't it his last year? He doesn't probably even know at this point. So, Fletcher Cox, he doesn't care. He might be grooming his replacement. He doesn't care. You know why? They want the chip. They want the chip. And again, it goes back to just being ultimate competitors. That's the mantra that Nick Sirianni was preaching this week leading up to the Commanders game. And, Wentz week is in the books. Dougie Peterson week is on deck. And so, we'll get into some Jaguars talk. I promise you, we'll prepare you for that all week long. But I want to get into some of this Monday Night Football game from last night. Some interesting ripple effects. We had Philadelphia play Washington. We had Dallas play the Giants. Philly sitting at 3-0. Dallas and the Giants at 2-1. Washington at 1-2. Here's what we learned this weekend. Okay. What I learned from the Washington game is that Carson Wentz is not a starting caliber NFL quarterback anymore. Just my opinion. Wouldn't be conducting my train. Wouldn't be the guy that I rest my head on my pillow and envision hoisting the Lombardi trophy. We needed Nick Foles to get that done. Carson Wentz never won a playoff game, quite frankly. And I don't think he ever will. And it wouldn't surprise me if Carson Wentz is out of the league in a year or two, because nobody's going to touch this guy. He's going to command starting money. Maybe he latches on and finds a backup role next year, but I can't imagine anybody in the National Football League that wants this guy to start at quarterback. And that's why he's on his third team in 3 years. So when I look at the Washington schedule, at Dallas, that's a loss. Versus the Titans, probably a loss. At Chicago, which could be tough, but I'll give them the W there, right? So let's say they're 2-4 after that stretch. At some point, like I said, probably before that Week 10 rematch with Philadelphia, I think Sam Howell is going to get a test drive to see what he's have at some point. And I'm not sure if they go to Heineke first. I think I know what Taylor Heineke is. I like him. I like Taylor Heineke. I think he's a gamer. But he's kind of in that Case Keenum mold, that Carson Wentz mold. Like, he's going to make a mistake that'll probably kill you at some point. So what Heineke really is essentially is a cheaper version of Carson Wentz. I think Sam Howell is going to get a shot. It might be as early as Week 10 against the Eagles. That's what I learned from that game. Bad decision-making, holds on to the football too long, takes way too many hits. And then speaking of taking too many hits, for all this talk about the improved Giants offensive line, Daniel Jones had never been under more duress than last night. At last check in the fourth quarter, they just made an announcement. He had been pressured a career-high 21 plays as he was getting sacked. So I guess that makes it 22 pressures on the night. Not sure where that tally finished. Daniel Jones is another one. And on the broadcast, Joe Buck brought it up again. I don't get what these people are watching. Well, the Giants are still trying to figure out if Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback. Really? He started 44 games. He's won about 15 of them. Sadly, that was one of the better performances I saw Daniel Jones play, and it was terrible. And the bad luck just continues to mount for the New York Football Giants, despite that 2-0 start. Suddenly, the walls are starting to crack. The cave is starting to implode. Kenny Golladay, did you see him just drop a wide open, should have been touchdown pass? And then he wants to get mad at the coaching staff why he's not playing? Dude, Kenny Golladay is toast. After that drop, after bitching and moaning and complaining about PT, you drop a wide open touchdown pass. Boop! Can't believe it's not butter. That's Kenny Golladay. We got a new sponsorship for you. Oh, by the way, they might need a Golladay because Sterling Shepard, he went out with the knee injury. Head coach Brian Daboll saying it didn't look good after the game. Reports this morning are saying Sterling Shepard could be lost for the season. Could be lost for the season. So their number one receiver out. Their number one money-making receiver stinks. Kadarius Toney, who the coaching staff doesn't even like. There was talk about the Giants trying to cut their losses while they can and try to get something of value in return because he's just a bad apple in the locker room. And that's why you got guys like David Sills, Colin Johnson. Talk about a no-name offense. The Giants, they play the Commanders this week. Oh, no. The Giants play the Bears this week. So they should beat the Bears. They're going to lose to Green Bay. They're going to lose to Baltimore. I got the Giants at 3-3 when the Eagles go into their bye week. So I will say Saquon Barkley looks rejuvenated. Barkley looks like his old self again. So that's exciting because he's one of the best running backs in the game when healthy. And at one point, you could argue Barkley, Zeke, they were right up there in terms of some of the top running backs in the league. Barkley has bounced back. Ezekiel Elliott, not so much. I said it before the season, and I continue to see it. I saw it last season. I continue to see it this season. Tony Pollard is the more explosive runner in that Cowboys backfield. And I think Mike McCarthy finally somebody woke up Coach McCarthy from his drunken stupor and informed him, hey, Coach, Tony Pollard's the guy. You need to get him some more work. And we saw that last night. Check out these numbers. Ezekiel Elliott, 15 carries for 73 yards. He averaged 4.9 per carry. Tony Pollard, 13 for 105. He averaged 8.1 yards per carry. So as well as Cooper Rush has played, he's been leaning on that backfield to get the job done. And, oh, by the way, Jerry Jones said, wouldn't it be great if we had a quarterback controversy on our hands? Well, I don't think we're going to get that. But Cooper Rush did what he had to do. 2-0 as a starter, filling in for Dak. He won a fill-in game last year. Don't look now. Somebody's about to pay Cooper Rush some Chase Daniel money in the offseason to be a backup maybe. And I thought it was interesting. I think Troy Aikman brought this up on the broadcast. I had forgotten. Offensive coordinator there, Kellen Moore, was a teammate of Cooper Rush. They actually crossed paths. And Kellen Moore, you talk about a guy ascending in the coaching ranks. We had G.J. Kinney on a couple weeks ago, 33-year-old head coach. Not sure how old Kellen Moore is there, but Aikman made the point that if anybody knows the playbook or the offense as well as Moore, it's Cooper Rush. The guys were teammates. They're friends. We talked about Shane Steichen and Jalen Hurts' relationship. Cooper Rush has that relationship with the Kellen Moore. And so Dak Prescott now had his stitches removed from his throwing thumb. Sounds like he's going to give it a go this week against Washington. And, we'll see. They've got Washington, who they should beat. Then they're at the Rams, tough game. And then they come at Philly. Washington and the Rams, I think they split. That'll put them at 3-2 heading into that Week 6 Philadelphia matchup. And even if they beat the Eagles and are 4-2, the Eagles could be 5-1. I don't think Dallas is going away. That's what we learned here this week in the NFC East. I think that's the point I want to make is Dallas. The Giants are a joke. Their 2-0 record is a mirage. It's a facade. They're going to come back down to reality real quick. We'll see if they even beat the Bears. They got no shot at Green Bay versus the Ravens. They're going to be 3-3 at best. Commanders 2-4 at best. Dallas 4-2 at best. And I thought it was interesting that somebody put it out there on the Twitterverse. The Philadelphia Eagles are the only team in the National Football League that are favored to win every single game the rest of the year. How about that? So now we'll get all the haters and the critics. Oh, Hurts can't beat a good team. Oh, the Eagles didn't really play anybody. Get ready for that narrative all season long. That Thanksgiving week against the Packers, it's going to be the biggest test. That's the litmus test. At Arizona, this Jaguars team, don't overlook these next 3 games are all going to be challenging, quite frankly. The Jaguars, the Cardinals, the Cowboys, these are no gimmies. But if the Eagles take care of business and do what they got to do, you're going to hear the narrative, oh, well, they never really beat nobody. Hurts hasn't really faced anyone. A couple last notes on the game last night. Beautiful, just beautiful one-handed catch by CeeDee Lamb. What was it? A post route in the back of the end zone, bringing it down one-handed on Monday Night Football. Not quite the Odell Beckham catch, but a beautiful catch. And then DeMarcus Lawrence, D-Law, 3 sacks yesterday, getting in on the quarterback pressure 22 times. The Giants offensive line, it doesn't matter who they draft, who they sign. It's just like the subway turnstiles, just constant pressure, constant duress. And it's not a pretty scene for Daniel Jones and the New York Football Giants. In fact, I still think Brian Daboll's good old friend Tyrod Taylor, when he comes back from injury, might get handed the starting job right after this stretch. If they lose to the Bears and then they lost to the Cowboys, Bears, Packers, Ravens, if they lose 4 or 5 games in a row, get ready for Tyrod Taylor. Tim the Toolman, double T, Tyrod, check down Taylor. So anyway, that's what we learned from the NFC East. You wake up, you're in first place. You're one of only 2 teams to be undefeated. We're feeling good. What did somebody say last week? We're smelling ourselves over here, and it smells real good here at the Jersey Shore. Ric Serritella breaking it down for you on the Football Playbook. Hey, when we come back after the commercial break, if you weren't down in the DC game, getting it in, our next guest he's Gale Saunders from 4th and John. We're going to chop it up, break it down with him right after the break.